Namaste, friends. Welcome. So I'm here today with Hamid Ali, who's author and spiritual teacher. And I want to just tell you a little about him, and then we're going to be talking. But maybe to start with that, this is one of those interviews or conversations I've been really, really excited about because of the impact Hamid has had on my own practice. So you'll hear more about that. He's the founder of the Diamond Approach to Self-Realization. And this emerged in the context of ancient spiritual teachings and modern depth psychology theories. So I'll be asking him to tell you about the Diamond Approach. And for now, I just want to kind of say that in reading his most recent book, Nondual Love, so much inspiration. I'll show it to you. This is what it looks like. And you'll see the little Post-its because, just so many parts of it that I just sat with and found really touched something deep. So I want to, right from the get-go, let you know about his latest book. Again, it's Nondual Love. And just to say that I've only had a few encounters at retreats with Hamid where we were in the same place, but it's been incredibly nourishing to my path. So I'm delighted to share him with you today, and welcome to you. Thank you for being with us. I thought maybe I'd start in kind of as promised with a broad stroke question, which is to tell us a little about the Diamond Approach, for listeners who are either Buddhist or more generally exploring mindfulness and compassion and have had no exposure. Can you just give us a bit of a feeling for what this approach is?
Well, it's called the Diamond Approach from the beginning. First, I want to say I'm glad to be here with everybody and share with everybody and think that'll be useful for all of us. And that's what the Diamond Approach is really, is something to be useful for people who come in contact with it. I started with my own personal experience in the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s. And at some point, I was having certain experiences, certain awakenings, of different kinds. And at some point, I recognized this is not just for me. And other people can benefit from it because some of the truths arising were universal. They were true about other people, both in terms of the spiritual condition that arise and the particular obstacles, the psychological thing that's come up. So I start working with people from that perspective. And then after a while, I recognize this is really a whole teaching that is emerging. Like there are so many parts of it, there's so many dimensions and facets to it that address different parts of the human consciousness and the human life. So it dawned on me a little bit. I didn't set out to do a teaching, develop a teaching, or anything like that. It developed itself. And I happened to be the vehicle, So that's the thing about spiritual reality. Spiritual reality does this thing. We're not in control. We're not the pilot. The spiritual reality comes through. And for a while, you might think we're doing it, but at some point it shows itself, no, I'm the one who's here.
I just want to say that one of the things you said at some point that most impacted me is that reality is meditating. So that I sit down to meditate and I think of your words, well, it's reality that's meditating. And it helps to immediately dissolve that sense of being the meditator trying to do something.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to the very heart of non-duality, because that's what non-dual means. The spiritual nature, the awareness of the conscious is not separate from the individual who is practicing. They are two sides of the same thing. So when we are separate, we think we are meditating, we are doing this, we are doing that. When we recognize separateness is not true, we are one with our nature, and our nature pervades everything, including all of our mind and body and consciousness. Well, who's meditating then? There's only one.
Can you say more how you describe our nature? You know, you talk about true nature a lot. I mean, it's kind of recognizing that as right at the center. What are the ways it manifests, and you know, what are the flavors? Just speaking a little bit to that.
Yeah. I use the word true nature, so parallel to the Buddhist concept, the Buddha nature, to the Garba. And the Buddhist concept of Buddha nature, I don't use it because it uses the word Buddha. I mean, it's people think of it as a particular Buddha, while it's not what it's really meant, but it's similar. However, and so I call it true nature, the true nature of our consciousness, true nature of reality, true nature of what we are. And the thing that this teaching has shown, that true nature manifests, appears in many ways, not just one way. And it takes us on many journeys. So it can manifest as pure awareness, luminous, transparent, pure awareness that is filling our consciousness, that is composing our consciousness and body and everything, or it can manifest as presence, as pure presence, but also manifest as pure love. And that, so love and awareness are two sides of the same thing in that case, but also manifests many qualities that I call essential qualities of our true nature, which are closer to the human conscious, human, like, for instance, you know, strength, courage, power, fulfillment, peace, you know, will. These are qualities of true nature that when they emerge, they're not just emotion, they're not just thoughts, they are really true nature itself, and its very presence and consciousness manifesting in this quality and imbuing our individual consciousness for us to feel, experience that these are part of what we are, part of the treasure that is available to human beings. And that has been really very useful for many people, because many people, they don't long for awareness or for emptiness, but they long for love. They know they need courage, and they need sense of capacity, and they need ability to relate to other human beings. I mean, the stuff of life. And so these qualities are part of what's needed, the stuff of life, but they're really needed for the inner path, for the practice. We need the love, courage, and perseverance, and commitment, and all that to be able to continue practicing. But these are not just our mind deciding to do these things. These are qualities of our being, of our true nature, that we, when they manifest, when we can access them, they're naturally present. And then part of what we are, which makes both our life and our practice much easier, you know, more manageable. And that in time takes us to more the transcendent qualities, like awareness and emptiness. I mean, it is the same nature, and just reveals itself if we access, if we become in touch, we recognize ourselves as that. It just keep revealing, keep showing, keep manifesting, unfolding to show not only many qualities, there are many realization. For instance, you know, I talk, this book is about non-dual realization, but there are other realization that the true nature shows us at some point. That I don't mention this book. I don't think this is the topic of today, but the idea is that reality is really mysterious and full of surprises. And what I learned is not to take any state and condition to be that's it. That's the final thing. And every time I did that, it changed me to something else.
I love what you're saying right now. A few things I want to just highlight. One is that we have sometimes a static notion about true nature or what we're trying to get to or experience. And by um, exploring it more as a range of essence qualities that come out through these body minds in different ways actually helps us trust what we belong to more, and we can sense it more readily, and that it keeps on changing, uh, frees us from holding on to anything and keeps us open and curious about whatever else is coming. So I love that. It creates an attitude that actually makes us more available.
And it makes us not become fixated or
Exactly.
attached. I mean,
Exactly.
if we're attached to one thing, we get clobbered. We feel the obstruction, we feel the tension, and we open up and things flow and we become easy again.
So then a question, this is a little bit coming right into this moment. Are you in your own way of being aware of the essence qualities that are arising in any given moment?
Myself, yes. That's how I practiced, is to be aware of what's arising and not just to be aware of it, to become curious about it and delve into it and explore it in as much depth and as much breadth as possible, both what it is and how does it impact my usual ordinary consciousness and mind, how it affects my life. It's an interesting journey. So yes, I mean, and that's what everybody who learns this teaching has to do. They need to become aware of them.
So, and does that include what's the quality of consciousness when you're engaged? For instance, right now, as we're speaking, is there some witnessing or some noticing of the essence qualities or what's going on that's happening as part of this?
Yeah, witnessing or awareness is always, of course, constant. And that's why, in some sense, mindfulness is a basis for the exploration that I engage in. Without being aware of what's there, I don't know what to explore. So it says there is, from the beginning. I mean, I learned, Vipassana many years ago myself. That was sort of was there, was already present. So, but I teach many of my students awareness, to be aware of the body and mind, and then to become aware of what arises in it. And for the beginning, many people are aware mostly of their sensation, emotion, thoughts, and all of that. And that is fine. How to approach them in a way that is not judgmental, and to learn to work with the judgments and the criticism that our mind brings. Is not is good enough, whatever. All these arise that are much of the pain at the beginning. To learn how to work with these things so that experience can be there on its own without reaction to it. When experience is there without reaction, whether judgment or rejection or whatever, then it is possible to explore. Explore doesn't mean I do anything to it. I don't poke it or stuff like that. It's more like I'm curious. I'm interested to know what is its truth. What is it? Why is it arising? What's it about? What's it connected to? How is it relevant to what's happening right now?
And that curiosity is to me one of the most powerful, useful, leading kind of attitudes that comes across, Hamid. It's like no matter what's going on, if you can be interested in it, there's some possibility to not be as identified and to really wake up through it. And you use inquiry a lot in the Diamond Approach, and I was hoping you could share some about it because it's such an amazing technique.
Well, inquiry is the main practice, central practice of that approach. It's basically an investigation and exploration of our present experience, not something happened in the past. No, what's happening right now. To really feel it, sense it, taste it, and as completely as possible. And if there are any obstructions to experience it completely, to explore that, what's that? So that become to melt away and dissolve. And then if the experience was arising is some presence, then there's a discovery, it's nice. And then, but then I say, what is the presence? What that feel like? What that about? Or sometimes what's arising is sadness, for instance. Explore sadness. What's the sadness about? It could be something, it might be something about the present or something about the past. And so exploring it is finding out the meaning of it. What is the meaning of the sadness? How is it related to what? And that is an ongoing exploration then, because there's always content in experience. So it's not a matter of just being aware of the content and letting it be. It's really getting interested, especially in the content that seem to be foreground, that seem to be impacting experience. That is really important for experience of life at the present time. That's what I call the burning question, the question that's something arises that I need to know. There's a sense of passion about this is something I got to understand, I got to experience. So inquiry, of course, curiosity is an important part of it, but it has many other capacities of consciousness necessary, like I mentioned, awareness and curiosity, but love. Well, the love is more loving to know what is the truth. So the motive is not I want to get someplace.
Mhm.
It's not I want to change it to experience some transcendence or It's more like I really want to know what is the truth of this, whatever it is. I want to know its truth. And if we follow the truth of what is happening, it is connected to other truth in our experience, and because everything in us is interconnected with everything else in us and things in the world too. So if we follow the thread of truth, it could take us to deeper and more profound truth until we get to the truth of true nature and its qualities. So there is awareness, there's curiosity. There's also need to be compassion, kindness, because a lot of what arises is pain and suffering, and we cannot deal with that if we're not kind to ourselves. If we judge ourselves or we try to change so kindness means I'm able to welcome the pain and suffering
Mhm.
and hold it tenderly so that it reveals its truth. What's it about? And that can deepen both the compassion and the experience. So compassion or kindness is important for inquiry. And there's also a need for courage because sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult. Sometimes we encounter anger or rejection or abandonment and might be scary. Sometimes encounter emptiness or fears. So there need to be courage, and courage is one of the qualities also of our true nature. And we need perseverance. We need to persevere. We're not just I'm with it for a while, but then forget about something else, distract me. Even if I'm living my life, I have to do other things. The thread remains within me, and I come back to it.
I mean, it sounds like basically we need the qualities that are essence expressions in order to come back to realizing essence. In
Exactly.
other words, the very qualities for inquiry are are essence qualities themselves.
Yeah. At the beginning, we have them on some level, like a sort of a shadow of them in our emotions and mind and all that. And we use those until we get to the actual real qualities.
Mhm.
Then that empowers the inquiry for it to become much stronger and more profound.
And you also often teach about how no matter what the emotion is, how much painful, how squeezing, that there's naturally a kind of a transformation to something that's really a beautiful quality, an essence quality. Could you speak a little more to that? How emotions get transformed?
Yeah, because really, all of our experience is an expression of something about us, something about our true nature. But it is appearing in a way as a reaction or as a distortion or as a historical overlay or something conditioning from outside. And so if we understand those things, they will unveil, they will part, like a veil that parts and reveal what's underlying them, what's really behind. I mean, for instance, there is hatred because there is love. There is anger because there is strength. There is fear because there is just fearless awareness. So all of these, the human emotion, are really a reflection of something more real. By understanding them, we get to what's real, and that's how they transform. So instead of being scared, what fear is about is to protect us, you know. But if we're really aware and conscious of what's there, that's really what's needed. Fear is basically gets us to be more alert. Well, when it is real natural fear, not when it's neurotic fear that to close us down. No.
I sometimes think of it as every emotion is life loving life, but there's a torque because there's a perception of separation, and that torques them in some way. And when you start inquiring, it's as you say, you kind of dissolve that sense of separateness, and then the basic intention of the energy can express itself in a natural, more pure way.
That is exactly the case. That, for instance, anger. When people anger has a sense of intensity, sense of aggression, but a sense of sort of inner heat, like it's hot. Anger is hot when you really feel it. If you just feel the heat, not the effect of aggression, the heat will lead you to something hot, what's warm in the consciousness, and that heat turned out to be one of the main characteristics of the inner essential quality that when we experience it as pure strength,
Mm.
and energy and courage and assertiveness, you know. So there's no need for anger. I'm strong and courageous, and I could say what I want,
Well,
and
that's such a cool example because
yeah,
you said when you really feel the heat rather than the other elements, it's the
yeah,
narrative around anger. You did this, he shouldn't have done that, I couldn't,
right,
it's the narrative that keeps the perception of separate self there. As soon as you let go of the narrative and just feel the energetic qualities, then they're free to express themselves in that wholesome, empowered way.
exactly. And we need to not push away the narrative. We need to acknowledge it, have some understanding of it, so that it will relax, and to show that what's anger is about energetically
I think
is
that's really important that you're saying that, and it bring and in a way, this is kind of an extension. You work with a lot of Buddhist practitioners, have come to different
yeah,
Ridwan or Diamond Heart,
mm,
and a lot of the Buddhist meditation practices have to do with step out of your thoughts, come into presence, and What I'm hearing you say is that you don't want to get entangled and lost in believing your thoughts. But if you don't have some awareness of the narrative, you can't untangle. And you talk about it, the object relations, the different underlying kind of snags that actually keep us identified. So maybe you could speak more to that.
Yeah, object relation, the way that our sense of self gets structured from early childhood by our relationship with our important people in our life, they become internalized and become impressed in our consciousness as some kind of structures of consciousness that will appear in the self as patterns of relationship and interaction and character. And we need to recognize those, because you cannot drop the self just by saying it's a self, I don't want it. The self is composed of so many layers of years of development, and it's natural for it to develop. It's not a mistake. It was a mistake, then there'll be people around the world who will grow up without the self. Everybody grow up with the self, with the ego self, because that's part of the development of the human consciousness. And it and has all the history. When we were little kids, we were very impressionable. Everything is done was, we experience, leave an impression. It's not just a memory, an impression and consciousness, like forms us, it forms our sense of what we are. And that becomes a self, and that need to be unpacked, really. So for me, I had experiences when I stepped out of the self. I wasn't in the self, I was something else. But that didn't really liberate me. Liberation happens by really getting into the self and its content, and not being afraid of that. That's our history. That's what we want to be experienced. And if it hasn't been understood completely, understood and in a way that there's no rejection of it, no fear of it, it won't go away. It will stay there. So as understanding it means it has come, it's welcomed, it's light is shed on it. It is, and I call it metabolism, it's metabolized, a metabolism of our history. As I metabolize my history, it becomes what leaves a certain kind of truth. Some of it is true, some of it is love stuff around it. And it reveals truth, the truth we're talking about, like courage and will, like sometimes somebody's experience, their will gets thwarted. They felt they couldn't do anything. They felt they didn't have it and all of that. By working through the history around it, the will arises. The one gets thwarted because it is part of what we are. It's our part of being human, is that we have this treasure of true nature as our nature. So it arises as some kind of solidity, solidity and grounding and confidence. It is natural to us, and I think it's natural for all human beings. And I wish as many human beings as possible access those qualities themselves, because they'll be more human.
I'm with you. And I feel like what you're getting at is something that's really important for people that are involved with practices with the intention to wake up to who they really are, but have a program in their brain that says that means I have to dissolve the self, get beyond the self. And it turns in a subtle way into a self trying to dissolve itself. And that creates a tension in people. And some it's more conscious and some it's not conscious. But I think there's a message sometimes that it's a mistake or bad to have an identification with the self. And then what's needed is what you're describing, is a willingness not to be at odds with, but really just get interested and willing to explore, well, how did this identification form? What is truth? And that takes a lot of tenderness, takes a lot of love. And I was just hoping you could speak some. I mean, this book is on non-dual love, and you also talk about bringing love to the different processes going on. You talk about the relationship between awareness and love. So just to invite you to speak more of it.
Yeah, I mean, the more we are actually open, the more we explore the sense of self, and it is sort of untangled and understood, and sort of the more we understand, the more it tends to dissolve, it tends to sort of recede, it tends to be less powerful and its hold on our consciousness. Then the more the heart opens naturally. The heart is there, not open for money or restricted, because a lot of the identification and the history of the, whether it was a trauma or abandonment or pain, whatever, that closed the heart. So the heart opens at some point, and then the qualities of love begin to come through as some of the qualities of our true nature. And love, there are many kinds, and non-dual love is one particular kind, but it's more like a dimension, an ocean of love where all kind of love emerge. You see, and I wrote a book before this one, which is Love Unveiled, where I discuss different qualities of love, like passionate love, or an appreciative love, or connection love. All these are love that are important for human being. Here, I'm talking about something that underlies it. That what is love? Love and its fundamental ground as a boundless, infinite. When we experience it, I think you probably read my experience there in the book about it. It's like it suffuses everything. It's everything. It's just like awareness. When you're aware, when you recognize the nature of awareness, it's everywhere. It's not like just in my mind. Awareness pervades everything. Find out that love actually you can experience it as pervading everything. And it is a characteristics or a dimension of our fundamental spiritual nature that is inherently there, inherent to our true nature, that has love, has goodness. People know that that spiritual nature is good in general, but human being understand good to be loving. When we say good, what does good mean? Very much associated with love, because goodness means, love means, to love somebody means I want them to be happy. I love them in such a way. I like them in a way that I want them to be as happy as they are, as they can be, and as fulfilled as possible. That's what love is. And so self-love is important that way, and loving others, and then recognizing where love comes from. So that really we have love, we have human hearts, because the universe has hearts as one of its dimensions. Awareness is basic ground, but that awareness can become loving, can become golden or pink or whatever, and beautiful and sweet, melty and soft and caressing. And so I call it divine love sometimes, non-dual love, meaning it's pure and has no self in it. And it's a wonderful thing for a human being to recognize that love is not only comes through my heart, but my heart, the instrument, the eye through which I can be aware that love is unbounded, that is everywhere. It comes through everybody's heart. It's the same love when it comes through people's hearts. And the main characteristic of it is not selfish, not self-centered, and not self-seeking. It's completely giving, effulgent, generous. And if it comes through a human heart, there is a feeling of recognizing that love in other people and appreciating their preciousness, because they are really a being of both awareness and love.
This brings up two questions. And the first one is, if love is an essence expression of awareness, is it any different qualitatively from the other essence expressions? whether it's faith or strength or whatever, there's a number of them. Is there any difference in terms of primordial or more basic? Are they all expressions of awareness?
Well, and the path I follow, the teaching that has developed, show there are many qualities of essence, like will and strength and power and compassion and clarity, intelligence, all of that. And there are many, I don't know how many.
Yeah.
I know probably 30 or 40 of them. I'm sure there are more, right? Like fulfillment and satisfaction and,
Yeah.
joy, all of these things. And then there are, these are things closer to the human mind can relate to them, even if they don't know about true nature or essential nature. Most people, love makes sense to them, compassion makes sense to them, strength makes sense to them, courage makes sense to them. But when it comes to the other dimension, the other thing about true nature, which are not the qualities, what I call dimensions, which are more basic, or the ground of all these qualities. And the ground is more transcendent, is not individual, and it is unbounded, not within one skin, one heart, or one body. And these are basics, and many teachings have emphasized some or another. So one of them is emptiness, for instance, pure emptiness, emptiness of non-existence, or non-being. But also being is a dimension, pure presence. That is everywhere. Everything is a pure presence of, it feels like it has awareness, has fullness, has substantiality, like a full. When you say somebody has presence, what do we mean? Something comes through that is present. It's not like their body is just present. It's not just like their awareness, they're present. Presence is its own thing. And it's the whole field. It's a whole dimension. That's what I call pure being, a pure presence. And there is a dimension of pure love. And there's a dimension, pure awareness. And the pure awareness is just the capacity to have experience, capacity to perceive. So pure awareness for me is non-conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
It is not necessarily knowing what I'm aware of. I'm just aware. And the knowingness come from the presence has the capacity, cognitive capacity that is added to the awareness. And then there is a dynamic creative dimension, which is make things happen, make things change. How do things change in this boundless expanse of non-duality? Because people talk about non-dual, everything is not separate from each other. It's true, they're not separate, but they change and they move. The car is not separate from the road, but it moves on the road from one block to another. What makes it move? Right? There is a dynamic dimension that is always creating and changing things. So, and then there is a dimension of emptiness, pure emptiness. So I usually work with 5 of those transcendent dimensions. I'm sure there are more, but there's 5 I find very useful to have, because they account for things in our experience, like emptiness account for the fact that there's space, awareness account that we have experience, love account we have heart, pure presence has knowingness account for the fact that there's knowing, and the dynamism account for the fact that there's life, there's movement, there's growth, there's development. But these have basic ground that are responsible for them and make those are possible. So that's going from the particular qualities to fundamental grounds. Many teaching, they take just one ground and stick with it. Mm-hmm. Like Vedanta talk about consciousness, pure consciousness, right? In Buddhism, I think it's either emptiness or awareness, or empty awareness as the ground. which are true. They are ground. Fundamentally,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. In this teaching, those I acknowledge, I know them as a ground, but I also see love as a ground. In the
Hmm.
sense we can see everything made out of love. Just like we can see everything made out of pure, translucent awareness, we can see everything made out of this luminous, golden, sweet lovingness.
And that's so this leads us, because I think what I'm hoping to kind of drop into a little more now is what helps uh, awaken us to that. I mean, what are the ways of intentionally opening? Let's say we're starting off from a sense of separateness where there's some ego perceptions, but we want to open more to the love that's already there, but we're feeling blocked from. What are ways of opening to love intentionally?
Yeah, first we need to be our heart need to be open. I mean, we need to be able to feel love, at least the qualities of love, like liking and appreciation and compassion, all of that. And then after that, we need to see through the main non-dual obstacle, which is the separateness, which is here the belief I'm a separate entity. I'm an independent, separate entity with my own will and choice and all of that. We recognize that as actually a structure in the mind. It's a mental belief that's not really, if we feel into our presence, there isn't anything like that. It is something in the mind that puts over us. If we see that, we understand that it will relieve us from the boundaries, the separateness, and then the heart to become unbounded. And when the heart becomes unbounded, it becomes this divine non-dual love, which is, it brings in love to non-duality, which is, many traditions talk about non-dual teaching. Here, I'm trying to say, yes, there is non-dual experience, which is important, but that non-dual experience can also be based on love.
Mm. For some of us, it's not so easy to just see, oh, here are the blocks, here's how I'm creating separation. And then in the seeing, there's a releasing, and then the love fills up. For some, um, it's being with the pain of the separation. And, I've seen for myself so many times that by bringing attention to that pain, it's not the realization, oh, I'm creating separation. It's not that, which is almost mental at that time. It would be there, but it would be mental. It's more the being with and opening to, I'm thinking of times I have felt um, deficient, ashamed, in pain at that. And then getting to a place of powerlessness, helplessness, like, just please love me, universe. Please love me. And if my plea and my prayer and the longing to feel loved is strong enough, there's a kind of porousness that allows for me to feel the love. And then in that feeling the love, feeling bathed, there's a dissolving of that separateness, and I realize, oh, it's not love out there coming from out there. It's just the love of this universe that's living through. But I have to go through the portal of the presence with pain. It doesn't come because I realize, oh, I'm creating separation. D- and-
You're correct. I had to do the same thing. I went through years of feeling not exactly separate. I wasn't trying to get to non-separateness because I didn't assume that there is such a thing. I was just feeling constriction, like I was bounded by some walls, and they were made out of tension,
Mm.
around my body, and made me feel constricted, small, and with all the history that wall, which is I call ego boundaries. The wall is made out of all the images we have of ourselves that in time include the images of our body. So we take the contours of our body as our boundaries of what we are, that becomes very deeply instilled in our consciousness. And it takes a great deal of attention to that and understanding it. And so it's first chipped away by understanding the various things I talked about different things, about abandonment or fear or, aggression and all these things, because those are involved with the images that form the boundaries. And at some point, it becomes just the fact that the experience is bounded and feels constricted, like my presence there, it feels it's hemmed in. And then I explore that. And exploring that, you see, the same way with kindness and allowing it to be there until there is a recognition at some point that it is really a mental concept in my mind. When that recognition happens, it tends to lose its power. It begins to peter out. And that, as it peters out, the lovingness not only emerges from within, emerges from everywhere. But love has something different from other dimension in the sense it brings in longing. Because when we are away from what we love, when our heart is sort of somewhat constricted, the constriction appears as longing for the true love, longing for that openness of the heart. Like people rarely are longing for awareness, for instance, or emptiness. They don't long. Most people don't long for these things, unless they learned about enlightenment, read about it. They don't want it. But the actual heart longing, I want to be loved. I want to love myself, or I'm longing for love. So basically, longing for different kind of thing. The longing and the yearning and the tears. No, the poetry, spiritual poetry, throughout history is about love and yearning and longing, like Kabir and Rumi and others. And so longing is a big part of how love manifests when love is constricted. When, in some sense, yearning and longing is the expression of the fact that there is love. If there was no love, there'll be no yearning. I long for this. Why do I long for it? Because I love it. So the longing can lead us to them. Love, but it's good you brought in the question of longing, because our longing is a messenger, really. It's not something to be gotten rid of. It's a messenger of the heart, or something deep in the heart.
Well, one of the things that I feel like I'm so grateful for, Hamid, in reading was you helped me understand better how sometimes when we're caught in that identity as a separate self, the feeling of longing, which, as you say, I think of it as, love calling me home. If we embody it, if we open to it, that openness actually allows the love that's always already there to come. And it's similar with prayer, that there's a wise way of prayer that, when I'm praying in some way, metaphorically, my head is bowed. It's like this recognition that this ego self can't do it, and it's a letting go of that notion of a, doing self, and then that makes room for what's again here. But you brought in how it can be really useful, given we hang out a lot in that separate self state, to be able to go these pathways, but also that there's limitations, that we can then get stuck in always feeling like we're turning to something larger. And so I was just hoping you could speak to that, to that amazing chapter, personal God, because just discerning between religious and spiritual, just the personal relationship, how it can be valuable, how it can be limiting with a sense of the sacred.
Yeah, I remember an experience I had. I don't know if it's in this book, where it was a prayer. I was praying, and the prayer was basically asking for forgiveness And in the prayer, I recognized I can't get out of my way. As I was praying, I recognized, I couldn't completely ask for forgiveness because there's some things in me that were in the way. And little by little in the prayer, I recognized the utter helplessness I was in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't do anything. Whatever I say, it comes out from ego. Even my prayer was coming out from ego.
Mm.
The ego was there as part of my identity. And when recognizing that, I thought, it's hopeless. I can't do anything. It is recognizing that complete, utter helplessness, which was not just about me, but it is objective, true helplessness. It's not like helpless because something is stopping me. I'm helpless because that's the nature of this consciousness. Such separate individuals helpless, cannot liberate itself. Recognizing that helplessness, then when I recognize it and let it be, helpless, can't do anything, not in my hand, that's when there was a descent that happens of like I get showered with honey, very thick, sweet honey that melted body, melted the boundaries, all the way to complete cessation of consciousness. Melted everything, including my consciousness. And when I woke up from that cessation, it was complete clarity.
It's a beautiful illustration. There's something about helplessness that has such truth to it, that it's the realizing the truth itself dissolves, and then there's the space that can fill with the loving. And you, in several, and I'll just say to everyone listening, there are several ways that Hamid describes his own experience in an amazingly vivid way that give you a sense of how things can happen. And in one of those, you described, it was a different example, but of the helplessness and then grace, the unfolding of the love. And I'm just wondering if you can speak more to how we are caught in thinking we have to make an effort. And we do have to make an effort to a certain degree, but it's not until we kind of give up the efforting that full grace can happen.
That's very true. That's very, right on. As long as we take ourselves to be a separate individual, we have to make an effort. We have to assume we have will, we have free will. Ultimately, we don't. But on that level of identification, we can choose. We have a choice to go one way or another, and we need to apply our choice, and we need to apply our efforts all the way to recognizing that the effort doesn't work. But in the effort, like, at the beginning, people, when they learn to meditate, they have to put an effort. They have to tell themselves, yes, I want to sit and meditate. And it's not easy for many people to come and sit and meditate for half an hour every morning. It takes a lot of discipline. And at the beginning, it's effort before it becomes easy and we like it and becomes something we love to do. But for a while, it takes effort. So effort is the work of the separate self that takes it to the level of recognizing its effort is in the way. And then it can naturally drop the effort.
And as you were saying before, what lets that all work is that what's really behind the effort is there's something in us that loves truth and loves love. So it's mingled in with a sense of a self trying to get somewhere, but there's that pure love for waking up that is in some way, moving it all.
I think you're right. It's natural for a human being to arise in them at some point what's called the thought of enlightenment, or the enlightenment drive, which is a drive, just like the 3 and 6 show drive, there's an actual spiritual drive at some point that wakes up and emerges to want to move, expand, to open up, to recognize what I see in life is not all there is. There's something more. Where I am is not it. I'm not happy. I'm not, isn't what I'm doing is not going to do it. So there is an actual recognition, and that drive is powerful. And not all human beings, it's a potential for all human beings, but it needs a certain level of maturity and opportunity for it to wake up and to exert its power. And it's powerful, you know, and the more powerful it is, the more powerful is our practice. And it's really ultimately what helps the practice make it effective. It is through nature, in some sense, moving to reveal itself. And it appears in us as the desire or the drive or the wanting to wake up or to be more free, to be free of suffering, or to be more real or have more meaning, whatever it is, it appears that way.
It totally resonates. I mean, there's some ways of framing it that whatever suffering we seem to be experiencing is awareness waking up through us, kind of calling our attention to recognize the block, recognize the twerk of thinking we're separate, and in that recognizing, you know, come back into wholeness. One of the blocks that seems really big for most people to loving is that there's early pain and then dissociating from the body, and so that it becomes an abstraction, that the heart loves as an abstraction. And I'm wondering, because I know that you really invite people right into the nitty-gritty of feeling where things are, felt sense. Can you speak a little to embodiment as a kind of essential part of waking up through the blocks?
Yeah, that's why one of the practices I teach is a kind of embodiment, has to do with the body and being able to sense the body, be aware of the body, to be grounded in the body. The body becomes, in some sense, the outer skin of consciousness. It is sensitive too, and so that's, I use breathing techniques and things like that to awaken this. The body does not only need to be aware of it, it needs to be awakened. It's sort of deadened and muted because of all the identification and the construction. Ego structure, the ego identity doesn't just make the mind be dull, it makes the body be dull too.
Exactly.
So the body need to be vivified and alive, and that is how our spiritual nature awakens, partly through the body and the heart and the mind. So being aware of the body and freedom of the body is a very important part, at least of this path. I know some teaching, they sort of push away the body, like the Greeks, so the body was the problem. You can't be free while you are the body. I don't have that view. I think the body is part of what we are. In fact, the Buddhism has that you have to be born in a human body to have the opportunity for enlightenment, right? And I think that is very true. We need to be human, which means to have a human body, for us to wake up to what we are, but also for a consciousness to learn things it couldn't learn without the body. The body here, we're here in the physical plane, not just to be liberated, but to be liberated and live a liberated life. To live life fully. And we need to be liberated to see what life is, what does it offer, what are opportunities of learning and discovery and experience. And so the body is significant that way, and having a human life is really important, is really precious. And it's good for us to know ourselves as completely as possible so that our life becomes a real life. It's us, it is me, what I truly am, my true present awareness, living my life, not my identity from the past. not a shadow of myself living my life. It's me completely, directly, immediately living like life and going through it and expressing the qualities that I have learned in this life. And so life becomes both an opportunity and arena to give too.
It's the easiest area to forget that in any moments that we're really caught in virtual or conceptual, we're not in that intimate, creative, dynamic aliveness. And I know for myself, I have to keep coming back. And so you teach different ways of deepening attention to where the blocks are in the body and in the emotional body. I wanted to ask you, like, for myself, those bodies have been critical domains to untangle. One of the biggest for me in the last decade has been the cultural body, the um, conditioning of our society, and examining how the society's beliefs, of course, our caregivers are messengers, but beliefs in hierarchy, beliefs in who's better than who, racial bias, how much, if that's unseen, there's still energetic blocks that keep me separate from a true sense of um, that the same love, light, energy is flowing through everybody. Like it's an idea and it's a felt sense when I'm meditating. But as I interact in the world, all those old structures from the cultural conditioning, especially racism, are there. And I'm wondering in Diamond Heart if there's some emphasis on examining those blocks as part of truly freeing ourselves.
Well, our true nature doesn't have those things. It's a timeless truth. Timeless truth has no gender, has no nationality, has no particular, cultural identification, whatever. But culture is natural. Some is good to grow up in a certain culture and have a certain cuisine and say, But if we're identified with the culture, that can color our consciousness, and we can become a constriction that is not inherent to our true nature. So anything that's not inherent to our true nature will become a barrier. So yes, in the path, we do work with cultural conditioning because it's part of conditioning, and the same thing about, true nature, racist. How can it be? It's the true nature, the nature of everybody and everything is the same nature. So if I see somebody being racist, I just say they're ignorant. They don't that's not reality. They don't know themselves, basically.
Well, if you see somebody,
regular person.
But pretty much everybody you work with probably has worked on in some way addressing basic trust issues. I mean, there's different basic issues most of us encounter that are not true nature. They're expressions of that twisted true nature that they need to untorque. And I guess what I was sharing with you is that for me, the racial conditioning has been a torque that until I examined it, I had no idea how much it was actually compartmentalizing my experiences of true nature. And if I wanted to live more from a realized place, how specifically important it was to examine that. So that's why I'm particularly bringing up racism, because I don't think it's just certain people who are ignorant. I think it's part of the air that we breathe.
Well, yeah, the whole culture can be racist, sure.
Yeah.
Racism it's also, ancient thing. It's not new.
Yeah.
It's not just particular to our culture. It's in most cultures, and it's been throughout history. Racism, slavery, and subjugation, and inequality. These are part of the human conditioning, and part of the ego life, inherent to ego life, actually, because in ego, if you are an ego, you're a separate, you want to have support of people like you grew up with, and other people will sort of alien in some sense.
Mhm.
Well, that takes us back to primitive times, sort of, when you don't know the other tribe, they're probably dangerous till you know them, right? So it goes all the way back. It's very primitive, the human consciousness. But regardless of how old and primitive it is not true in our spiritual nature. Spiritual nature, totally open, totally non-judgmental and tolerant. It's not only tolerant, it sees the same nature in everybody.
Mm, mm,
I'm not just other people, animals and beings and all of that. I mean, they're all at nature itself. As part, it has the same true nature. We need to take care of our earth. Our earth is our mother.
exactly.
We
I mean, I
grew
love
up
the
in it.
way
Our bodies grew up in it. We couldn't do without it.
you describe the kind of waking up to boundarylessness. It's in a beautiful way. You said, I am experiencing light and love. And then it expands to I am light and love. And
Yeah,
then it goes to everything is light and love.
right.
And I just wanted to invite you, because I know we're closing in here, that boundarylessness, of really getting it's not the light and love that's in here. There's no in, there's no out, that it is the source and essence of everything. Just what helps us to open and relax into that one.
Yeah, I mean, it is potential for all human beings because it is deep in us, but we have to be open to it. We have to, it doesn't just come by itself most of the time. For most people don't have access, unfortunately. It doesn't just, forcefully come through every human being and just at a certain age, everybody knows about it. It doesn't work that way. There's a need to maturation and learning and interest in freedom and interest in liberation and knowing the truth of what reality is, what a human being is. And a human being is, through a human being, race is not an issue. Yeah, completely. For instance, I grew up in a different culture, a different country, I'm considered a colored person, actually.
Hmm.
I'm brown, right? Most of my students don't talk to me as if I'm a colored person. They don't know that. I mean, it's like they know it, but I don't talk from that perspective. I never did. For me, I'm just a human being that embodies and expresses what is true to all human beings. So I'm not white, I'm not black or dark or this or that, but our bodies have those expressions, have those things, and that's our external, our vehicle in earth comes with a different kind of colors and genders and all of that, which is the variety that true nature expresses itself. I see it as variety and richness, instead of a problem.
I wish that we all did. The challenge, I won't frame it as problem because it's just reality playing itself out, is that when there's difference and then there's added to that something's bad and there's aversion, then humans violate each other. So there are many people who are people of color who would like to just say, oh, everybody's got a different appearance, but they're living with trauma in their bodies that are just like you described. Those are layers that need attention and unblocking in order
Yes,
to come
because
home.
some people more than other, hold on to it for identity because it become part of the identity. And we not only mistreat each other because of color and race, but also power dynamics and
Yes,
uh,
yes.
gender. I mean, our society is full of troubles like that. No.
It's true. I mean, hierarchy seems to be built into the human predicament. Our brain's architecture is to compare and seek to
Yeah.
have, one-upmanship and so on.
I mean, if it wasn't for our true nature, we're hopeless. Our only
Oh gosh,
hope
that's a
is
great quote.
really our true nature. I think all the people and the reformers who are trying to do things outside, it's not going to work if it wasn't for our true nature.
Well, I would say that our true nature is what's calling them to do the work. And our
I
true nature is
so true. Yeah,
it's an expression of reality
it
that
is. Yes.
caring would
Yeah,
manifest in that way.
it is. Yeah. But I think the issues you're bringing up are deep and profound, and it's going to take a while.
It
I don't
is.
think like in another 10 years or a century, these things are going to be all gone. It will be like the Star Trek universe, where everybody is equal and nobody has just their own excellence would make them do one thing or another. That's a kind of thing, unfortunately. I mean, the human race has been living like this for millennium. It goes up and down. Certain areas, there's more tolerance, more enlightenment than others, but the rest of the world is still in darkness. And we are sort of like this, there's a mixture of lightness and dark. And it's good that there's light. The light is spreading in many places, because of our global communication. So we know and about that, and many teaching are going everywhere. But I think the human identification with the separate self is so profound, and many people are so busy making a living. They don't have time to meditate or even question what their life about. Not, because lack of opportunity, all kinds of stuff. So it's going to take time, but it's bound to happen at some point because it's our nature. Our nature is the most powerful thing there is.
It's what we are. And so maybe a final question for you, and thank you for this time.
Yeah.
You, at the end of your book, you talk about grace, and you talk about grace when you're describing your own uh, experiences, that when there's a seeing of the selfing, of the separate self, it's grace, that spontaneous expression of loving, of that honey pouring in or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Can you say more? Because I feel like it's such a powerful and deep thing to attend to, the potential of grace in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that chapter. So grace appears in people's life in different ways. Appears like in having a good life, for instance, having good opportunity, and being born in good circumstances, having loving parents, and encountering positive influences, encountering teaching and teachers. That is grace. That is the function of grace, of our true nature. It is not just haphazard. It's not just, accident. But the specific grace that sometimes we talk about is that we experience an actual energetic arising or a descent or a downpour of a presence or quality of awareness that has a sense of goodness, a sense of generosity, and it is an expression of love, really, the love of the true nature. It appears as grace, and it appears in different ways for different people and different circumstances. It can arise within us, within the heart, or can arise sort of outside us and touches us and sort of melts us. And these are specific grace but also grace, if it wasn't for grace, we won't practice. For instance, it's the grace that makes us practice, really, because true nature calling us, calling our outer self to wake up. Here I am. I'm knock at the door. Go practice. That is grace too. But there could be very specific, clear grace in the sense of an actual spiritual experience, some kind of almost rain in the room that sort of makes everything beautiful, that melts the boundaries, and melts the self, and we just the aware presence.
Mm.
You know.
Thank you for that. It feels like what you're sharing is as we can deepen trust that grace is part of the expression of true awareness of love really calling us home, carrying us home, and it arises exactly when the selfing starts to drop away. It's like it clears the way for
Yeah,
grace.
you see, there's no liberation without grace. Grace is what does it. The ego doesn't do it. The ego, remember we talked about, it's helpless, can't really do it.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Oh my gosh, so much that you've just brought in. So I want to thank you really for sharing with our community. And I want to let those listening again know this is not the only book. There are others, and but it's the most recent, and you got some little flavors of it through what we talked about. So
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Tara, for this opportunity. I feel my heart and my sweetness sort of suffusing the field, which is sort of what's in the book. So it's really appearing, and I'm hoping that some of the people, at least some who are listening, can taste that, can
mm,
feel it.
that's the grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye, everybody.